The poupées from France, from the 1860s to the 1870s, a golden 20-year decade of fabulous, fabulous French poupée dolls. Dolls dressed to represent adult women and gentlemen, not children. And they are just such desirable figures when you can find unusual examples. Many of them were generic, the same. People like Margaret Lumia, who had an eye, looked for different variations, not only of body styles, but of facial models and of different type of fashion, different type of techniques that the makers were working with. We have probably 30 in the auction, and I'm showing you just a small representation here, and I'll show you just a few more later on. Let's start over on this side, on the right-hand side, where we have a very beautiful and elegant lady. What a costume. I've got to show you details of the costumes of these dolls. This doll is by Alexandre Dehors. Dehors is most known to collectors because he invented this system. He deposed a system to make a head not only swivel side to side, but to tilt forward and backward as though nodding and flirtatious and much more realistic. And it was directly done in opposition to the Hooray Bebe that really could not do anything except swivel its head side to side. And if it was a shoulder head, not even that. Look at the back of that hat. Just look at that. That is an unbelievable doll. The costume is very full, totally original, an extraordinary costume. And coming around, and you can see her beautiful movement of her head, turning, pivoting, and backward. And her rare bent left arm, a rare feature on the Alexandre Dehors doll. The next one, a mystery doll. Very, very different, a very expressive face. What does this face remind you of? A lot of people say, and I'm going to show you something in a few minutes that you'll say even more, it reminds them of some of the expressive faces on the early Neapolitan figures. But this model has a shoulder head. We're not sure how we made it. There was a lot of conjecture for many years that it was a Hooray poupée, but more recently, based on research by Francois Timer, there's a possibility that it was a George Most, M-O-S-T, man who designed this technique for having enamel eyes in dolls, although other people had done it too, but his doll was just so different and so expressive. And look at the teeth. Those little tiny teeth are absolutely wonderful. This doll is wearing an extraordinary original costume as well. She has bisque arms to above the elbow, which is very desirable. I'm going to show you the top of her hat so you can see that. And then look at her from the side profile with her chubby little face and her double chin, and she's just a wonderful doll. Very, very, I think the reason people thought it was Hooray was that she has, if you can notice it, those very dreamy upper eyelids, very heavy eyelids, and that was always a signal characteristic of the Hooray poupée. Very beautiful doll and extremely rare. Mr. Gentleman, indeed. Wooden body as well as being a handsome fellow. Swivel head from a series of dolls, of which probably only 3 or 4 are known to exist. They were believed to be done for an exhibition, probably 1867 International Exhibition, and this gentleman wearing his original top hat with his cummerbund, his wonderful tall hat, and the artistry and the painting of that face and the rarity of the figure cannot be overestimated. This woman is simply stunning. I haven't seen this face before. She's very, very beautiful. I want to turn her to the side so you're able to see this kind of a very aristocratic straight line from the forehead to the nose. There's not a lot of dip there. It almost looks like Grecian or Roman to me, the way her face is done. Very, very different, very regal, very distinct modeling of the nose and the chin. beautiful portrait. And once again, she has, if you are getting the catalog, you're going to be able to see what the surprise is. She has a wooden body, bisque lower legs, and bisque arms to above the elbow. So not only does she have a stunning portrait face, a gorgeous costume, but she has an extremely rare body as well. A model I had personally not seen before myself. Now, look at her. You see the line of the hair around the side of the face? Are you able to see that? Because that is following the way the pate was put and the wig were put onto the back of the head. For many years, people thought that this was done by a wig maker out of Vienna called Kabelka. But in recent years, recent research is that we have found that it was actually the work of Laverdec, who were mannequin makers, or would make heads to put in milliner shops, people-sized heads to display bonnets on, and they came up with this idea of putting like a wax coating on top of the pate, and then the hair could be inserted into it, and it would have a much more realistic line to the side of the face to show the bonnet. This is sometimes some of the Laverdes have this distinct portrait face, probably done by Brew. We're not sure at this point, and very kind of smug, I'm high society statement in their face. This one wearing a stunning antique costume and bonnet. Next we have from our Mr. Brew, we have this wonderful early doll. This is the early example of his smiling brew, marked with the letters to designate the size, but his actual smiling face, which I'll show you in a minute, was not deposed until 1872. So this particular example, with a little, not quite as well-defined a smile, would date prior to that, has his original kid body and his wooden articulated arms and a gorgeous white dress with long train, extended train, and cap. Now I wanted to show you, because you saw this doll before, when I showed you the mannequins from the early 1800s, and I told you that Brew had borrowed the concept of the mannequin body and deposed his body for poupées. What you didn't realize, another surprise about this doll, it's two-faced. It's a double-faced doll, sleeping and awake. So the doll has so many rare features about it. It has the wooden body with the swivel with the ball swivel waist, the articulation at all of the joints, and two-faced model. So you could show whatever mood you were feeling that day. So we were talking about the Brew, the smiling Brew that was deposed in 1872, and that is the girl right here. And she has so much question about her over the years that people have researched her. For many years, there was a notion that she represented the Empress Eugenie of Paris, and that's still a possibility because she does quite closely resemble her in the styling of her face and her nose. She also very much looks like one of the famous angel sculptures that appeared in Paris at the time in many of the cathedrals. So this is the problem with portrait dolls. We unless there's documentation, Leon Casimir Brew sculpted this doll and she was designed to represent the Empress Eugenie. More than likely, many of the dolls that were being sculpted in the 1800s were inspired by the presence of a celebrity or an important person rather than specifically being a sculpture of them. But when people talk about the smiling Brew, this is the face they mean, and the one we saw a few minutes ago was the earlier version of that. Let's do her because she's also a Brew, and let's stay with the Brew while we can for an example. Brew continued throughout. If you recall in the bébés, I showed you several of the black bébés. Earlier on, he had introduced his wonderful poupée in a black complexion. And here she is in a gorgeous, gorgeous gown. And look at her. Look at the gown, how it extends in the back. And then the bonnet is very beautiful. the way her wig is done is just stunning. And then she has, and I always look for this in the black complexion dolls because I want to see them. If I were owning them and I were the collector, I want to see that flawless complexion, and that's what she has. It is absolutely beautiful. No rubs of any kind, and just gleaming and lustrous. This is a very rare model and a very, very beautiful example of this model. Staying with a little blue costume, then this ice blue was one of the classic colors that were used on the French poupées of the 1860 period in particular. And here's a little tiny girl with cobalt eyes. Let's turn her around so you look at her original wig. Oh, look at that wig just tumbling onto the back of her gown. It's totally pristine. She's just beautiful. Her gown at the front has this wonderful lappets with the ivory lappets with the soutache embroidery on the top of them. Very beautiful. And then the zigzag lace borders. A wonderful, pristine example. Another beautiful example in the petite model is a little girl, poupée, and she's wearing the classic costume of the Normandy governess. Normandy was a source of many young girls coming to Paris to serve as nannies to the wealthy Parisian families. And this costume is wonderful to find in all original condition. And I sometimes wonder, was this given to a child because to represent the nanny that took care of them, or was this like a gift to the nanny of a costume of her traditional land? I don't know, but at any rate, it is absolutely superb, even with her little spectacles. Another wonderful and classic poupée with beautiful eyes, this gorgeous white summer dress, her original wig, and, folks, you can't see it, but totally all wooden articulated body. So desirable to find in the fashion dolls because of the way you can pose them. And even look at the detail of the carving of her hands. It's so superb, wonderfully done. I have a few curiosities I want to show you too. And this one now, when I move her wig is going to fall off, and I've left it that way because I'm going to show you the inside of her head. I don't know what this doll is. I am totally puzzled by it. When I first saw it, the way the texture was on the face, I thought that someone had restored the doll. But I've examined it closely, inside and out. I've seen photographs of another example of this doll, the only other one I know that exists, and there is nothing to indicate that there is any restoration, and we're going to show you the inside of the head so you can see that. I simply think it is the texture and the way it was painted. But when I turn it around again, I want you to look at the painted teeth and look at this doll, which has painted eyes, whereas the other one had the glass eyes. If you remember the model we showed you in our first group with those wonderful little tiny painted teeth. But again, doesn't this doll remind you of one of the characters in the Neapolitan series with their very, very expressive, upper-glancing kind of looks? Extraordinarily rare and a wonderful curiosity, and I would be so thrilled if anyone knows about this doll, if they would share their information with me so I can share it all with you. A very handsome gentleman with, again, a beautiful, flawless complexion I wanted you to see, and he has this wonderful sculpted long mustache flowing down. Very, very grand costume. I'm going to turn it around so you can see all of the applique work on the back side. Very, very fine. And two other rare dolls to see. If I asked you to pick this up and you did, the first thing you would say to me is, wow, this is so light, I can't believe it. Because this is the Clement Body. This was done by Mr. Clement, who introduced his doll. Pierre Clement was a shoemaker. He made leather shoes for people, and I don't know what made him think, well, leather shoes or leather doll body, what's the difference? So I could make a hollow leather body for a doll. Rather than a kid body stuffed with sawdust, his bodies are hollow inside. And he would make a mold, put them on the mold, and sew them. Peggy Lancaster, a wonderful early collector, is the one I always like to remember, people that shared information with me. And she's the one who taught me you can always tell a Clement doll, not just from the light weight, but look at the back of the leg, and you're always going to see the seam going up the back of the leg. And that's good to identify because Clement dolls are extremely, extremely rare. I guess he was more successful as a shoemaker than as a doll body maker. He has the original mark on the torso because he deposed his system as well. And then finally, another system that was deposed, and this is a very rare doll also, and this is the doll by Radico and Cordonnier. This was a young married couple, and they worked in the Paris theater scene, and they made costumes for theater presentations. They designed a doll that would be able to show miniature models of what their fashion costumes would be. Very, very distinctive modeled bosom, the arm with the bent left elbow, bare feet, and Barbie, you were not the first. Holes in the feet that would connect with the metal rods on the original stand. And in this case, the original stand has the original Radico and Cordonnier label on it. So again, a very, very rare doll to find. This is one of the last of the French poupées that were made and deposed. When you talk about French poupées, logically, you should begin with Hooray, because Adelaide Hooray was really the beginning of the whole French poupée movement. But I've saved this wonderful array of poupée and Romer dolls to show you at the end of this section, and I'm so thrilled with them from the Margaret Lumia collection, and there are several others in the collection as well. First of all, we have the porcelain-faced gentleman, and I think he's wonderful because he has his original body, and he has his great suit with all of these little wonderful details on it. I put in this dress is being sold separately. It is not a signed Hooray dress, but it has all of the details that would make one believe that it is, with this very elaborate long lappet streamers that swing across the front of the dress and form into these dangling streamers at the back. Very, very beautiful early dress. This dainty little darling is by Adelaide Hooray's competitor, Leontine Romer. Leontine Romer was brought in her doll in about 1860, 62, and she had several patents on her doll, but her main thing was she really kind of copied the concept of the Adelaide Hooray. Adelaide Hooray sued her. She lost. Leontine Romer continued making her dolls, and today collectors really have started to develop this great love for the Romer dolls, and well, they should. This petite example in this little antique original dress with her wonderful early bonnet, her cobalt blue eyes, her bisque arms to above the elbow, which is very, very desirable to have, is a great example. And then there is Adelaide Hooray in her golden years, and we have two beautiful examples here to show you. This particular one has the original Adelaide Hooray body, and she has the swivel head. She has a wonderful early costume, beautiful shoes, and I wanted to show you because we always talk about Hooray shoes, and sometimes they're not signed, and I will use the phrase in the style of, because it is a very, very distinctive style. This is a pair of signed Hooray shoes. Let me get it the right way up so you can see it. It says Hooray à Paris. And look at the shoes. There's like this darker edge that goes around the soles, and that's a very, very distinctive feature that appears on the Hooray shoes. So if they're not signed, it would be, and they're made in this technique, it is fair for you to describe them as in the Hooray style. But the ones that are definitely marked say Hooray à Paris, and this is one of the items in the catalog. And here is another one. Wow. People will fight for this. A gorgeous table with beautiful marquetry, mother of pearl, inlay woods, the figural column mounts, three shelves, and the pull-out drawer with the brass label, Hooray. Remember, the Hooray family, before Adelaide began her work, were furniture makers. And when she started making her dolls and they were successful, what did they do? They made examples of furniture in the doll size to accommodate to her doll. And we have this other beautiful Hooray. This is on a signed Hooray body, but of the later period. But again, gorgeous costume. Let me turn it around. You can see that fabulous hat all the way around. Absolutely beautiful, including the wig with the coiled braids. And then we bring her around, and she has with her a little mini trousseau. She has her night shift with the red embroidery and the little nightcap. I love the little pockets on the front. They're so nice. And then she has this gorgeous, gorgeous black taffeta, silk taffeta dress with the black velvet cape having the braided fringe and trim, and there is a separate little cap that goes with it. I love these little tassels that are coming down from the jacket. And then further, she owns, none of these pieces are signed Hooray, but definitely in that style and of that quality. And then we have this beautiful ensemble of the green taffeta skirt, black velvet jacket, and the very, very classic Hooray style cap. So 3 wonderful choices. I've really enjoyed showing you just a smattering of treasures from Landmark, the Margaret Lumia collection. I would hope that if any of you are ever able to come to one of our auctions, you might be able to come to this one, because it is like one day talk about a museum. It's the finest museum collection of dolls that we have had in a decade, and I just think that it would be a great opportunity for you. I would love to greet you there personally, come up and say hello to me or to all of our staff, and we're going to have a wonderful time. Thanks very much for tuning in. I'll see you again.